New York glitters by night, but beneath the skyline, mercy dies in silence. A subway platform turned into a grave. A Chinatown apartment drowned in screams. A suitcase drifted with a body beneath the harbor's calm. And a cop's home became her final battleground. Years later, their killers count the decades behind cold steel walls, yet no sentence can resurrect the quiet hearts they stole. Because justice may end in court, but mercy ends in memory. And this is Inside New York City's Most Dangerous Black Killers, Shocking Murders, and True Crime Cases. Welcome back to Justice Reversed, where real crimes meet real justice. Number 1. Simon Marshall. A Saturday morning in New York turned fatal when delusion met innocence on the city's busiest subway platform. On the 15th of January 2022, Michelle Alyssa Go, a 40-year-old financial executive and volunteer, was waiting for an R train at the Times Square, 42nd Street station. Standing near the platform's edge, she became the target of a random, unprovoked attack. Behind her stood 61-year-old Marshall Simon, a homeless man long known to city shelters. Without a word or warning, he shoved Go into the path of an oncoming train. The impact was immediate. She died before anyone could react. Moments earlier, Simon had harassed another woman, invading her space and shouting incoherently. She walked away, only to witness Go's death seconds later. Panic spread through the station as witnesses screamed and train screeched to a halt. Surveillance footage captured Simon fleeing, exiting the subway onto 42nd Street. Hours later, he turned himself into transit police, admitting responsibility. Detectives quickly confirmed his identity. Simon, originally from Haiti, had lived in New York for decades, working previously as a taxi driver before slipping into homelessness. His record showed multiple arrests and 2 felony convictions for attempted robbery in 1999 and 2019. Medical records revealed a long history of schizophrenia, diagnosed in 2002, with frequent hospitalizations and periods of noncompliance with medication. Investigators emphasized that Go had no connection to Simon, and the act was not classified as a hate crime. It occurred during a wave of anti-Asian assaults in the city, but the woman Simon first approached was not Asian, reinforcing that his motive was delusion, not bias. Police interviews and surveillance analysis confirmed the sequence. Simon arrived at the station around 9:30 a.m., loitered for several minutes, and targeted Go without interaction. Officers recovered his belongings from a nearby shelter, including prescriptions and medical paperwork linking him to psychiatric care. The city's Department of Mental Health and Hygiene confirmed he had been treated repeatedly but was not under supervision at the time. The case reignited criticism of how untreated mental illness intersects with public safety in New York's transit system. Michelle Go's life reflected everything Simon's had lost. Raised in California, she earned degrees from UCLA and NYU Stern before joining Deloitte as a senior manager in mergers and acquisitions. She devoted over a decade to volunteering with the New York Junior League, working directly with homeless individuals. The irony of her death deepened public outrage. In April 2022, a psychiatric evaluation declared Simon unfit to stand trial. He was committed indefinitely to a secure psychiatric hospital under city supervision. 2 years later, in April 2024, doctors determined he was mentally fit, and the court reinstated the murder charge. The trial remains pending. Vigils in Times Square and San Francisco's Chinatown drew hundreds, honoring Go's compassion and calling for reform. 3 lessons remain. Mental illness left untreated endangers all, compassion needs protection to survive, and prevention is the truest form of justice. One shove on the subway changed the city forever. Before moving on, if this truth hits you, press hype, stand with the forgotten, amplify justice, and make sure silence never buries the voices of the lost. Number 2. Assamad Nash. New York's night was still, but inside a Chinatown apartment, horror crept silently up 6 flights of stairs. On the 13th of February 2022, Christina Yuna Lee, a 35-year-old creative producer at Splice, returned home to her apartment at 111 Christie Street. Behind her, 25-year-old Assamad Nash, a homeless man with a violent criminal history, slipped through the building door just before it shut. He followed her up to the 6th floor, waited 1 flight below, and then forced his way into her apartment. Within minutes, her sanctuary became a crime scene. At 4:20 a.m., surveillance footage showed Lee entering her building while Nash stalked behind her. She had just exited a cab after a night out with friends. Nash pushed into her apartment, attempted to assault her, and began stabbing her when she resisted. Neighbors heard screams for help and called 911 at 4:22 a.m. Officers from the 5th Precinct arrived 3 minutes later. They could hear Lee's voice, faint and desperate, from behind the locked door. Nash had barricaded himself inside. Bodycam footage later revealed Nash imitating a woman's voice, trying to deceive police by claiming everything was fine. He refused to open the door, buying time as officers waited for tactical support. Nearly an hour passed before police breached the door at 5:40 a.m. Inside, they found Nash hiding beneath a mattress, covered in blood. Christina Una Lee lay dead in the bathtub, suffering over 40 stab wounds to her torso, head, and neck. A bloodied yellow-handled kitchen knife was found behind a dresser. Investigators quickly established Nash's identity and criminal background. He had multiple open cases, including assault and vandalism, and was out on supervised release. Police confirmed Nash had recently been staying at a nearby homeless shelter on Bowery Street. Despite Lee's Korean-American heritage, prosecutors did not charge the murder as a hate crime, concluding that Nash's motive was predatory, not racial. Nash's arrest reignited outrage over New York's bail reform policies and the lack of oversight in cases involving violent offenders with mental health histories. Officials confirmed that Nash had previously been arrested for punching a stranger on the subway and for vandalizing a MetroCard machine. In March 2022, Nash was indicted on first-degree murder, burglary, and sexually motivated felony charges. 2 years later, in June 2024, he pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and first-degree burglary. On the 30th of July 2024, he was sentenced to 30 years to life in state prison, 25 years for the murder and 5 for burglary. Justice Laura Ward noted his severe mental deficiencies that could not be corrected with medication. Lee's family, too grief-stricken to attend sentencing, called for accountability. They requested a memorial homeless shelter in her name, seeking justice through prevention rather than revenge. 3 lessons remain: unchecked violence grows in silence, failed systems breed tragedy, and no reform can replace a lost life. Her light went out, but the city still burns for answers. Number 3. Christian Millet. The East River carried a secret, a suitcase that would expose one of Manhattan's most chilling murders. On the 5th of February 2025, the captain of the Susan B. Anthony Ferry spotted a large black suitcase floating near Governor's Island. When NYPD harbor officers pulled it ashore, they found a sleeping bag inside, zipped shut around a torso, wrapped in plastic. Investigators soon identified the victim as 65-year-old Edwin Echevarria, a lifelong Manhattan resident who lived alone in the Baroque houses. And the case that began as a missing persons call turned into one of the city's most disturbing homicides of the year. Detectives learned that Echevarria had recently shared his apartment with 23-year-old Christian Millet, the grandson of Echevarria's former girlfriend. What was meant as an act of kindness had become a dangerous arrangement. Family members told police that Millet had been physically abusive, and Echevarria's daughter, Jennifer Matthews, had repeatedly warned her father not to let him move back in. But Echevarria, described by relatives as trusting and generous, allowed it anyway. On February 2, neighbors heard shouting echo through the apartment. According to investigators, an argument over food erupted between the two men and quickly escalated. Millet allegedly struck Echevarria, knocking him to the ground before stomping on his head. He then grabbed an ice pick and stabbed him repeatedly, 12 or 13 times, according to the medical examiner's estimate. The attack left the floor spattered in blood, marking the start of a gruesome cover-up that would carry into the East River. After the killing, Millet allegedly dismembered the body. Detectives believe he used kitchen knives to cut the remains, sealing the torso in a sleeping bag and placing it inside a suitcase. Surveillance footage from the Baroque houses later showed a man matching Millet's build leaving the building late that night, carrying a large dark suitcase. Forensic evidence later found blood traces inside the apartment's kitchen, bathroom, and hallway. Investigators also discovered plastic wrap, tape, and cleaning supplies smeared with Echevarria's blood. The suitcase's discovery set the investigation in motion. Detectives matched fingerprints on the sleeping bag to Millet and secured a search warrant for the apartment. When confronted by investigators, Millet reportedly admitted to the killing, describing how the argument turned violent and how he disposed of the body afterward. He was arrested around 9 p.m. on February 12 and charged with second-degree murder. Police stated that the search for additional remains across New York waterways was ongoing. On the 13th of February 2025, Millet was arraigned in Manhattan Criminal Court, but no verdict has been made public. The victim's daughter expressed sorrow and disbelief, saying her father's compassion cost him his life. Police officials called the killing one of the most shocking acts of domestic violence seen in the city that year. 3 lessons remain. Kindness without caution can invite danger, anger can destroy reason in seconds, and every crime leaves traces that truth will uncover. The river kept his secret, but justice surfaced with the tide. Number 4. Argenis Baez. The Bronx slept beneath summer heat when one home became the scene of a silent, fatal struggle. In the early hours of the 13th of June 2022, NYPD Transit Officer Ariana Reyes Gomez, 31, was found dead inside her apartment at 780 Grand Concourse in the Bronx. The investigation determined she had been stabbed multiple times by her estranged husband, 33-year-old Argenis Baez. The killing exposed the tragic reality of domestic violence within the home of an officer who had sworn to protect others. Reyes Gomez had served with the New York City Police Department since 2019, assigned to the Transit Bureau in Brooklyn. She lived with her 3-year-old son, who, fortunately, was with relatives at the time of the attack. Baez, who had no criminal history and no record of prior domestic violence reports, arrived at her apartment around 2 a.m. Surveillance footage captured him at the door, arguing and forcing his way inside after a brief struggle that lasted nearly 2 minutes. Once inside, prosecutors say Baez stabbed Reyes Gomez 8 times in the chest, torso, leg, and back using a kitchen knife. Moments later, he fled the apartment, holding the weapon, leaving behind a trail of blood and a single bloody footprint. Despite her critical wounds, Reyes managed to make a desperate call to a relative, who immediately dialed 911. Police and paramedics arrived around 3 a.m. to find the off-duty officer unresponsive and surrounded by signs of struggle. She was pronounced dead at the scene. The autopsy confirmed multiple stab wounds as the cause of death. Investigators quickly identified Baez as the prime suspect. Surveillance video showed him leaving the building alone minutes after the attack, his shirt stained with blood. Later that morning, Baez turned himself in at a nearby NYPD precinct. Detectives stated that he confessed the killing to his aunt before his surrender, prompting her family to contact authorities. Police confirmed that there were no previous reports of domestic disturbances between the two, and no criminal cases linked to Baez prior to the murder. Following his arrest, Baez was charged with second-degree murder, first-degree manslaughter, and fourth-degree criminal possession of a weapon. He was arraigned on the 12th of July 2022, before Bronx Supreme Court Justice Ralph Fabrizio, where he entered a plea of not guilty. He remains in custody pending trial and faces a potential sentence of 25 years to life if convicted. News of the murder sent shockwaves through the NYPD. Commissioner Keechant Sewell called the incident a devastating loss, while the Police Benevolent Association described being horrified and heartbroken. The department pledged ongoing support to Reyes Gomez's family and colleagues. The Bronx District Attorney highlighted her death as a painful reminder of the dangers of domestic violence, even for those trained to fight it. 3 lessons endure. Domestic violence can reach any home, silence before tragedy hides unseen warning signs, and protection must begin within. Justice moves slowly, but her legacy stands unbroken. Number 5. Khalid Barrow. Under the harsh glow of Bronx streetlights, a plastic bin sat abandoned. Inside lay the remains of a woman who had trusted family. On the 25th of February 2022, the body of 35-year-old Nisa Walcott was discovered inside a storage bin left on a sidewalk in the Highbridge section of the Bronx. Walcott, a single mother from East Harlem and an employee of the city's Administration for Children's Services, had been missing for over a week. The gruesome discovery shocked New York, revealing a murder driven by greed and betrayal at the hands of her cousin, 21-year-old Khalid Barrow. Investigators determined that the killing occurred on February 16 inside Walcott's East Harlem apartment. Barrow, who had been living with her, strangled her to death, fracturing her hyoid bone. Autopsy reports confirmed asphyxiation as the cause of death. After killing her, Barrow tied her ankles with a Wi-Fi cord, placed her body in a plastic tub lined with fabric, and scrubbed the apartment with bleach in an attempt to remove evidence. In the following days, Barrow impersonated Walcott through text messages, using her phone to deceive family members and co-workers. He instructed her 14-year-old son to leave the apartment door unlocked, claiming his mother had gone on a business trip and left him in charge. When the boy returned home, he found Barrow cleaning and the apartment filled with the stench of bleach. For several days, Barrow continued to access Walcott's credit cards and bank accounts, spending her money on food, marijuana, and alcohol. On February 18, he attempted to rent a car to dispose of the body but failed. Instead, he dragged the plastic tub to the roof of her apartment building, where it remained for several days. Family members grew suspicious when Walcott's text messages appeared unusual and impersonal. Her brother, Eugene Butler, noticed the strange tone and asked for a photo to prove she was safe. When Barrow sent an old picture, relatives realized something was wrong. They reported her missing on February 24, prompting police to question Barrow. That same night, Barrow moved the bin again, this time transporting it out of the building. Surveillance footage captured him dragging it across the street before abandoning it in the Bronx. The next afternoon, a local man collecting recyclables discovered the bin and called police after seeing a human leg inside. Detectives quickly pieced together the evidence, surveillance footage, phone data, and financial records all led back to Barrow. He was arrested on the 26th of February 2022, wearing the same clothing seen in the surveillance video and bearing a cut on his hand. In November 2023, a Manhattan Supreme Court jury convicted Barrow of second-degree murder, concealment of a human corpse, grand larceny, and possession of stolen property. The following month, he was sentenced to 25 years to life in state prison. 3 lessons endure: greed destroys trust, kindness must carry caution, and betrayal within family wounds the deepest. Justice came late, but Nisa Walcott's voice was finally heard. Number 6. Christopher Buggs. In a city that never sleeps, even the smallest clerical error can unleash chaos that ripples through New York's justice system. On the 29th of January 2018, 55-year-old Ernest Brownlee was shot and killed outside a Bedford-Stuyvesant bodega while waiting for his lunch order. The suspect, 26-year-old Christopher Buggs, was arrested days later and charged with second-degree murder and criminal possession of a firearm. Investigators said Brownlee was shot 3 times in the chest following an argument. Buggs was denied bail and remained at Rikers Island awaiting trial for more than 3 years. But in early 2021, a paperwork mistake would make him one of the most notorious mistaken releases in New York correctional history. On the 16th of February 2021, Buggs appeared in Brooklyn Supreme Court before Judge Vincent Delguidice. During the hearing, after his bail was denied, he became verbally abusive toward the judge. The outburst resulted in a separate contempt of court charge, and Buggs was ordered to serve a 30-day sentence for contempt, time that would run concurrently with his existing incarceration. When the court clerk processed the contempt paperwork, the sentence of time served was mistakenly entered as the final disposition for Buggs's murder case rather than the contempt charge. The error marked his murder case as closed. On the 9th of March 2021, Rikers Island staff prepared his release as if his case had been resolved. In the early morning hours, Buggs walked out of the Otis Bantam Correctional Center with a MetroCard, a few dollars in cash, and no supervision. Hours later, officials realized the error. The New York City Department of Correction confirmed that Buggs's release was the result of a clerical screw-up. He was still facing open charges for murder. Deputy Commissioner Peter Thorne launched a full internal investigation, calling the situation completely unacceptable. Authorities immediately warned the public that Buggs was considered armed and dangerous. A citywide manhunt began, led by the Docks Correction Intelligence Bureau and the U.S. Marshals Regional Fugitive Task Force. For more than a month, law enforcement tracked sightings and digital evidence across the city. Buggs was finally rearrested on the 16th of April 2021 at White Plains Road and 221st Street in the Bronx. The capture ended an intense 5-week search that exposed deep procedural flaws in New York's correctional system. Following his reapprehension, 4 Rikers staff members, including an assistant deputy warden, a captain, and 2 officers, were suspended pending disciplinary review. Buggs was returned to Rikers Island to await trial for the 2018 murder of Ernest Brownlee. Officials announced new internal safeguards to prevent similar incidents, promising enhanced record verification and staff retraining. The victim's widow, Winifred Mackins, said she was terrified when she learned bugs had been mistakenly released, describing anger, fear, and disbelief that the system could fail so completely. Mayor Bill de Blasio called the situation frustrating and unacceptable, promising a full procedural review. 3 lessons endure: precision in justice matters, one clerical line can change lives, and accountability must extend beyond the accused. Even one mistake can rewrite the meaning of justice. Number 7. Roland Codrington. The streets of Manhattan shimmered with holiday lights, but beneath the glow, a quiet predator hunted with a blade in hand. In December 2022, a wave of random knife attacks spread fear across New York City. The suspect, 35-year-old Roland Codrington of East Harlem, embarked on a 5-day crime spree that left 2 men dead and 3 others wounded. Authorities described his actions as senseless and brutal, murders with no clear motive, striking strangers in public spaces. The violence began just after midnight on December 19. Surveillance cameras in the East Village captured a brief argument outside a bar between Codrington and 51-year-old James Cunningham. Within seconds, Codrington pulled a knife and slashed Cunningham's throat, a single cut nearly 10 inches long. Cunningham collapsed on Avenue near East 13th Street and died at the scene. Police later confirmed the men had never met before that night. Codrington fled with his girlfriend, who had witnessed the killing. 3 days later, on December 22, Codrington returned to a familiar East Harlem bar called Teddy's, where he had previously argued with staff. Around 11:30 p.m., he entered the bar carrying a pit bull and a baseball bat. Witnesses said he stormed behind the counter, choked a 29-year-old bartender, and smashed glasses before drawing a large knife. When 2 men tried to intervene, he stabbed them both, one in the chest and back, the other in the spine. Both victims survived, but the attack left the bar in chaos. Hours later, in the early morning of December 23, Codrington walked into Marcus Garvey Park to cool off. There, he encountered 60-year-old pediatrician Dr. Bruce Henry. Police said the two exchanged brief words before Codrington became enraged and stabbed Henry multiple times in the torso, hands, and face. Henry's body was discovered less than an hour later, and his black Mercedes-Benz was missing. Codrington had driven away in the stolen vehicle with his girlfriend. The investigation pivoted quickly once detectives identified the stolen Mercedes. On Christmas Eve, around 9:40 p.m., patrol officers in the Bronx spotted the car near Jerome Avenue and 166th Street. After confirming the plate number, they moved in. Codrington surrendered without resistance and was taken into custody. Police recovered the vehicle and several knives. Officials later stated that he had a long history of arrests, at least 12 prior, including assault and weapons charges, and had recently been released from prison in 2021. Following his arrest, Codrington was charged with 2 counts of murder, 2 counts of attempted murder, assault, and criminal mischief. He was ordered held at Rikers Island without bail and placed on suicide watch pending a psychiatric evaluation. His girlfriend remains under investigation but has not been charged. Mayor Eric Adams urged stronger mental health interventions for repeat offenders and promised more targeted action against random street attacks. 3 lessons endure: untreated rage invites tragedy, random violence reshapes safety, and vigilance must guard even the brightest cities. The season of light ended in blood and silence. Number 8. Gerald Brevard. He moved like a shadow through 2 cities, striking sleeping men who never saw him coming. In March 2022, a series of cold-blooded shootings targeted homeless men across Washington, D.C., and New York City. Over 9 days, 5 men were attacked, 3 wounded and 2 killed, in what authorities described as a calculated spree of violence. The suspect, 30-year-old Gerald Brevard III of Washington, D.C., was arrested after an intensive joint investigation by the NYPD, the Metropolitan Police Department, and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. The first attack came before dawn on March 3 northeast D.C., where a man sleeping under an overpass was shot twice in the back but survived. 5 days later, on March 8, another homeless man was shot multiple times in the head, chest, and thigh. Surveillance footage captured the suspect sitting nearby afterward, listening to music, a moment prosecutors would later call chilling. The next day, police and firefighters found a tent burning in the same area. Inside lay 54-year-old Morgan Holmes. Initially thought to have died in the fire, an autopsy revealed multiple gunshot and stab wounds. Investigators later found footage of the suspect buying gasoline minutes before the blaze. Hours after the murder, Brevard was seen entering Union Station and boarding a train headed north. 3 days later, on March 12, the violence resurfaced in Manhattan. Around 4:30 a.m., a man sleeping near the Holland Tunnel was shot in the arm but survived after shouting for help. 90 minutes later, a final victim, Abdoulaye Coulibaly, a Gambian native, was found dead in Soho, still wrapped in his sleeping bag. Surveillance footage showed the gunman approach, kick the sleeping man, and fire twice into his head and neck before calmly walking away. Ballistic testing from both cities matched. .22 caliber cartridges marked with the same letter C, linking all 5 shootings to one firearm. A joint task force released security footage of the suspect, leading to a $70,000 reward for information. The case broke when a tipster recognized Brevard from the widely circulated video and provided his name, date of birth, and Instagram handle. Detectives confirmed his movements through cell phone records that placed him in both cities during the attacks. Photos from his social media matched the clothing seen in surveillance videos, a black quilted jacket and blue latex gloves. Brevard was arrested on the 15th of March 2022 at a Washington gas station by ATF agents after attempting to flee. He was charged with first-degree murder while armed, assault with intent to kill, and assault with a dangerous weapon. A judge ordered him held without bail, citing the unprovoked nature of the crimes and his disturbing behavior. Officials called the killings heartbreaking. Mayors Eric Adams and Muriel Bowser urged stronger protection for homeless individuals, while police intensified outreach and shelter programs. 3 lessons endure: indifference enables cruelty, coordinated policing saves lives, and public vigilance remains the strongest defense. A city's safety depends on eyes that never close. Number 9. Michael Morgan. A complaint about cold fries would trigger a chain of violence that stunned an entire city. On the 1st of August 2022, a 20-year-old man named Michael Morgan shot McDonald's worker Matthew Webb outside a restaurant on Fulton Street in Brooklyn's Bedford-Stuyvesant neighborhood. The argument began inside when Morgan's mother, Lisa Fulmore, demanded new French fries and accused employees of disrespect. She was on FaceTime with her son as the dispute escalated. Witnesses said Fulmore grew angry when workers laughed, prompting Morgan to rush to the restaurant with his girlfriend, Camelia Dunlap. Security footage captured the tense confrontation spilling onto the sidewalk. Morgan exchanged words with Webb before punching him and pulling a 9mm handgun. One shot struck Webb in the neck. As Webb collapsed, Morgan fled, allegedly discarding his clothes and gun. Fulmore later told police her son said he had to do what he had to do. Webb, a 23-year-old working 2 jobs to support himself through school, was rushed to Brookdale University Hospital. He was declared brain dead on August 3 and pronounced dead 2 days later. The killing, sparked by a trivial complaint, quickly became a flashpoint in New York's ongoing debate about street violence and repeat offenders. Detectives arrested Morgan hours later and charged him with attempted murder and weapon possession. Dunlap was also charged with criminal possession of a weapon after allegedly hiding the gun. During interrogation, Morgan unexpectedly referenced another shooting, a cold case from 2020 that had haunted Brooklyn detectives for 2 years. In that earlier case, 28-year-old Kevin Holloman was shot multiple times in October 2020 outside an apartment building just 6 blocks from the McDonald's. Detectives had suspected Morgan but lacked sufficient proof. His confession now tied him directly to Holloman's murder, allowing prosecutors to reopen the file. Investigators pieced together both crimes, finding that each had occurred within the same neighborhood radius and involved similar ballistics evidence. Morgan's history only deepened the alarm: 13 prior arrests for crimes, including assault, grand larceny, and theft of service. Authorities described a young man who repeatedly cycled through the justice system without meaningful deterrence. On August 4, Morgan was arraigned in Brooklyn Criminal Court. His charges were later upgraded to murder after Webb's death was confirmed. He was ordered held without bail. Dunlap's bail was set at $50,000. The tragedy drew anger and sorrow. Webb's family called him kind, hard-working, and full of potential, while Holloman's sister described the arrest as bittersweet, relief that justice had come but grief that her mother never lived to see it. City officials seized on the case to renew calls for reform. Mayor Eric Adams condemned New York's bail policies as insane, warning that leniency for repeat offenders endangered communities. Police Commissioner Keechant Sewell added that hundreds of shootings could be traced back to a few known recidivists. 3 lessons endure: unchecked anger ruins futures, violence breeds cycles of loss, and justice delayed endangers the innocent. 1 city, 2 victims, and a single senseless act that changed everything. Number 10. Jagger Freeman. A robbery planned for quick profit would trigger chaos, gunfire, and the death of a decorated NYPD detective. On the 12th of February 2019, Jagger Freeman and Christopher Ransom carried out an armed robbery at a T-Mobile store in Richmond Hill, Queens. Their plan was simple: steal cash and cell phones using a fake gun. But the holdup would end in tragedy when Detective Brian Simonson, a 19-year veteran of the NYPD, was fatally struck by friendly fire during the confrontation. The fatal bullet came from another officer's weapon, but prosecutors maintained that the 2 robbers were responsible for setting off the deadly chain of events. Freeman, then 28, had previously orchestrated another phone store robbery just days earlier. On February 12, Ransom entered the T-Mobile wearing dark clothing and brandishing an imitation handgun, forcing 2 employees into the back of the store. Freeman waited outside, monitoring the scene. At that moment, officers responded to a 911 call, reporting an armed robbery in progress. Detective Simonson and Sergeant Matthew Gorman, though off duty, joined the response team. As officers approached, Ransom charged out of the store holding the fake gun. In the split second that followed, 7 officers fired a total of 42 rounds. Simonson was struck once in the chest and collapsed. Sergeant Gorman was shot in the leg, while Ransom was hit 8 times but survived. The chaos lasted only 11 seconds, yet it left a veteran officer dead and a community reeling. Investigators immediately began examining body-worn camera footage, radio transmissions, and ballistics evidence. 2 weeks later, the NYPD announced that the fatal bullet could not be matched to any single weapon because the recovered round was too damaged to trace. Review of the scene confirmed that the responding officers acted within protocol, and the department placed full responsibility on Ransom and Freeman for creating the life-threatening situation that cost Detective Simonson his life. Both men were charged with felony murder, robbery, and assault. Ransom pleaded guilty in October 2021 to aggravated manslaughter and first-degree robbery, acknowledging that his actions caused the detective's death. He received 33 years in prison, followed by 5 years of supervision. Freeman refused a plea deal and went to trial. Over 8 weeks, jurors heard evidence that he had planned the robbery and coordinated the earlier heist days before. On the 13th of June 2022, he was convicted of murder, robbery, and assault. During sentencing on July 7, Judge Kenneth Holder imposed a term of 30 years to life, stating that Freeman and Ransom set in motion a series of events that made the outcome foreseeable. Freeman maintained his innocence but apologized to Simonson's family. Detective Simonson's widow, Leanne, delivered an emotional statement, calling the sentence justice for her husband and a lifetime of grief for those who loved him. The courtroom overflowed with officers as NYPD leaders praised the verdict as fair and necessary. 3 lessons endure: choices made in greed destroy lives, accountability transcends intent, and law demands consequence. A city still remembers the detective who never made it home. From subway platforms to Harlem rooftops, each story reminds us how thin the line is between ordinary life and irreversible horror. But every shadow exposed is one less secret left to haunt New York. If you want to keep uncovering the truth behind America's most chilling real crimes, don't just watch, join the pursuit. Hit subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and be the first to witness the next case that will shake the city to its core. Because here at Justice Reversed, every story ends, but justice never sleeps.